Hey guys, SGT here, and I've got Andy Hoffman from Miles Franklin back on the line to talk about an absolute watershed event, in his words, and that's the Bundesbank repatriating 374 tons of gold from the Bank of France and a bunch of gold from the New York Fed. Andy, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, and yes, this is another momentous timing of our call.
Well, why don't you take us through it? We noted last night on SGT Report that little Timmy and the folks over at 33 Liberty Street must be in an absolute panic because the jig is up, isn't it?
Right, and not only that, Apple is breaking through 500, so they really have a lot of fires to put out. But all kidding aside, this announcement last night from the Bundesbank could not be emphasized more as far as its importance. I mean, we all know that the trend toward central bank mistrust started back in 2011 when Venezuela repatriated their gold from the Bank of England. And since that time, we've now seen numerous banks, from the Swiss bank, the Austrian bank, the Dutch bank, all either actually asking for the gold back or inquiring as to whether it's there. But just 2 months ago, the Bundesbank, the bastion of strength and major partner in crime with the United States, said, we are definitely on board with the Fed. They're our partners. We are going to continue to keep our gold there. And then sure enough, last night, as you said, they're going to be taking back all of their gold from the Bank of France and most, if not all, from the Federal Reserve. And believe me, it's because they are scared of what the Fed has done with it or plans to do with it.
I want to read you this, too. Well, you just touched on Hugo Chavez's repatriation of gold there for Venezuela, and I want to touch on this from Silver Doctors. They write, quote, in the months that followed Chavez's 110-ton gold repatriation request in the summer of 2011, gold exploded nearly $400 in price as the bullion banks panicked. As the Bundesbank's official gold holdings at the Fed and the Bank of France dwarf Venezuela's holdings, don't be surprised if the price of physical gold goes supernova as Germany's repatriation request plays out, and paper gold rehypothecated 100 times over must suddenly be conjured up in physical form. What do you see happening here in terms of price? Because as we all know, the gold has been hypothecated and rehypothecated, and they go into the market on a daily basis and play paper games. If we all can see that the jig is up, and if now physical is being actually affected by countries going in and saying, give us our gold back, this really is a game changer. It really is a watershed event. What do you see happening?
Right. Well, in 2011, it's hard to equate Venezuela taking back 200 tons of gold to gold surging because, I mean, yes, it's a factor, and perhaps there was a shortage of physical gold that had to be recovered by the Bank of England, but it also coincided with the meltdown in Europe, the debt ceiling issue here. So I don't want to equate one to the other, although it was certainly a factor. Now, as far as this case, though, this is a far, far bigger issue because the Bundesbank, as you know, has the second most published gold reserves in the world. I don't know if they own them all, just like I don't know what the United States owns, but this is a huge gold hoard, and a lot of other central banks are going to be watching. Remember, the Swiss bank already has this in this kind of same process starting. So it is entirely possible that in the next year or two, all of the major central banks will be trying to get their gold back. And as you say, we know a lot of it has been hypothecated by the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury, because if it hadn't been, they'd allow an audit after 60 years or so. So there's certainly going to be less gold around to play with if it's going to have to be sent back to Germany and these other nations, which is going to make it very, very difficult to hold the price down. And I put out a piece last week showing over the 12 years of the gold bull market that gold has bottomed in January 7 years, February twice, once in March and once in April. In fact, the only time after April was in 2008 when you had the big global meltdown. So it's hard to believe, given the seasonal time of year and the importance of this incredible watershed event, that it's not going to lead to increased physical upside pressure in the coming months.
Let me throw this at you, Andy. I have written in the past some articles about James Rickards talking about keeping the gold that the New York Fed is holding for other countries and using it as a tool to reback the dollar. When he said those things, he said it on the Eric King program a couple of times. He said it in other interviews. I found it a bit shocking because, to me, that seems like a very dishonorable thing to do, or to suggest that the United States government could do that or would consider doing it. Jim Rickards is somebody who, the government does listen to. He's a consultant for certain agencies of the United States government. What do you think the chances are that Germany will not be given its gold back?
Well, first off, look, I too, I've been following Jim Rickards for years, and he gets more than his allotted press time in the gold community simply because he's known as an insider. But the fact is, he is an insider, and he still works for the government. And for every positive and intelligent thing he says about the gold market, he says an equally unintelligent and ridiculous thing, often that favor the side of the governments that he worked for. And look, I saw him speak at the GATA conference in London last year, and he said this. He said the United States will simply take everybody's gold if they try to get it back, and no one will do anything about it. And sure, that sounds good on paper until you have a world war, because I assure you, in a fiat currency world where everything's collapsing, if someone has someone else's gold, particularly if you're talking about major industrialized military nations like Germany, there's going to wind up being a war. So, could it happen in a hyperinflation? Of course. Hyperinflation always leads to war. It led to World War II, and this time around it's going to be a worldwide thing. So, sure, it could happen, but I honestly, Jim Rickards is not one of the people that I'd put high on my list of watching his every word.
Yeah, and that was my concern, too, is that exactly that, Andy, what he was saying could lead directly to another world war, because Germany is not going to stand idly by and just watch their gold get stolen. Let me ask you this. So the quote-unquote President Obama was on TV on Monday talking about the fact that America is not a deadbeat nation, and we, quote, pay our bills, but he can't pay the bills unless Congress gives him the money to do so. Let's talk a little bit about the fiscal cliff and what appears to me to be austerity coming straight at us, as now they've reinstated the 2% payroll tax, which is affecting everybody immediately. We're all feeling the pain now, aren't we?
Yeah, I actually wrote my piece this morning. It's called Deadbeat Nation, because I am still just floored that he actually used those two words, as if, we're supposed to be this big hegemonic power, and he's telling the world we're not a deadbeat nation. And, you talk about many a truth said in jest, because, of course, we are a deadbeat nation, and more importantly, he knows that the entire world knows it, and he feels that he needs to defend himself on national television. And again, it is really scary when he is now resorting to calling raising the debt ceiling as paying the bills, and then on the other side of his mouth saying we're not going to increase spending, we're just going to cut spending, we're just going to increase taxes. So we're talking about just bold-faced lies right out there in the public. We're talking about fear coming from the top. You had Geithner say, please raise the debt ceiling. Bernanke said, please raise the debt ceiling. In fact, the only person who said didn't do it is Boehner, and we know that Boehner, of course, caves into everything. So my only concern is that they don't actually get rid of the debt ceiling entirely, because to me, that's the end game right there. There's no way that the nation will survive another 12 months without a massive inflationary scare if they try to do that. And frankly, Obama is really trying to angle all of his tools to get the mandate to do an executive order to get rid of the debt ceiling, just like the executive orders he's going to issue tomorrow about gun control.
Well, we can talk briefly about gun control, too, if you'd like, because I think for a lot of folks that is the line in the sand. And if they try to come after the guns, confiscate or disarm the American people, they are going to lead us directly into a civil war, which none of us wants, except for maybe this government, because I can't explain it otherwise. Let's circle back, though, briefly about that fiscal cliff. There's no win. Our country's doomed either way. They can either get rid of the debt ceiling, or, they can keep it in place, and then we don't. There's no win. One way or the other, this country's going down, because all we do is borrow money and print money and borrow money and print money and spend it into oblivion. We're doomed either way, aren't we?
Well, thanks for watching part 1, guys. Don't miss part 2. Thanks for watching.